Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
It took several years, including some false starts, but the Defense Department's Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification Program is now a reality. The final rules are in place, and several hundred contractors have already earned their third-party certifications. But most of the initial implementation work will happen over the next year. For a look at the work ahead, Federal News Network's Justin Doubleday talked with Matthew Travis. He's the CEO of the Cyber Accreditation Body, the nonprofit organization that helps manage the certification process.
In essence, what you'll see in year one, which is, it's now started, the clock is ticking. For the next 12 months, you'll see requirements in new solicitations, so new contracts are being bid out, or potentially option years or contract extensions. They can be inserted, the department will be inserting level 1 CMMC requirements and also level 2 self-assessment. So level 2 is the bifurcated part of CMMC model where you could potentially get requirements that just require you to self-assess, or you're going to be required to hire a C3PO, a third party, to validate that. Year one of the phase implementation primarily focuses on level 1 FCI, Federal Contract Information Self-Assessment, or level 2 self-assessment for the 110 requirements in the NIST 800 standard. Now, the department in phase 1, in this first year, has reserved the right to insert the certification by C3PO requirements in select contracts. So we'll have to see, and I suspect we will see some of those. I don't know what programs would be, but you can imagine they're probably ones that are closer to operations and the tip of the spear, so to speak. So the department has reserved that right. So I think it's important to note that those are two different things, level 1 and level 2, right? So level 1 is the federal contract information. Level 2 is the controlled unclassified information. You can have companies that get both of those requirements because, in essence, they might have different scopes. Federal contract information is probably going to be more widely shared in some cases. Your financial controllers will need access to the contracts, maybe your business developers, whereas the CUI may be restricted in an enclave only to those people who are working on the project who actually need to store, transmit, or process CUI. So I think sometimes people think, well, year one, I'm not going to be forced to hire a C3PO. I may have to do a self-assessment, and if I get level 1, then I'll just do level 2 instead. But there's really two different things. So folks need to kind of pay attention to the contracts that come out with CMMC requirements or to their own vehicles that have option years or extensions. What exact requirements are those contracting offers putting in there? That's year 1. Year 2, then we go to, you'll be seeing on a regular basis those C3PO certification requirements for level 2, and then in the third year, level 3. And then the department's plan is that by 3 years into it, we are at scale. The ecosystem is mature, and CMMC is just a way of life now.
Right. Well, and for the longest time with this program, I think there's been this perception that companies are just kind of taking a wait-and-see approach. Is this really going to happen? Clearly, it is. But even now, with this ramp-up, are you seeing companies, organizations still kind of take that approach, or are they taking it more seriously? Are you seeing an increased interest or even demand at this point in certification?
We are seeing an increase, certainly an increase in the town hall attendance that we get at our monthly virtual town hall. We've seen an increase in the conferences, not only the ones that we put on, but the ones that we attend. But most notably, to your question, Justin, we are seeing a continued growth in the number of level 2 certification assessments that are being done on a voluntary basis. We're just under 500 now for level 2. But also the number of individuals who are becoming assessors, or at least entering the training pipeline to become assessors. Now, some of those are coming from C3POs who need more personnel to conduct assessments, but we're also seeing a number of defense contractors sending their own personnel to become certified assessors, so they have some in-house expertise. And so the numbers of those classes that are trained for CCA or the apprentice level, which is the CMMC Certified Professional or CCP, are increasing. I still think there are some holdouts, to be honest with you. Folks are going to think, I'll just wait till I see it in my contract before I move out. I think the risk there is, which we've been beating this drum for a number of years, is that CMMC Level 2 is not something you can just assign some mid-level IT admin manager to do over a weekend. It really requires a whole of organization to buy in to not only the specific requirements of the CMMC standard, but really when you look at it, is cybersecurity inculcated on how you do business? That's what the assessors want to look for, is that it's not a checklist assessment or an inspection. It is, are you meeting the standard that the department has set for its business partners? And even at level 1, which a lot of people dismiss as, it's just level 1, there's only 15 objectives. There are actually 59 assessment objectives when you drill down, 59 things you have to do at level 1. So for those companies who have either kind of procrastinated, because these requirements generally have been in their contracts anyway, CMMC is only the validation and certification that you've done that. For those companies who have been dragging their feet, I think they'll find themselves having to hustle a bit to get caught up, because it's not just the contracts that you might have that you're gauging, okay, when do I need to go ahead and implement? Who knows what's going to be put out for bid, and you might find yourself with the opportunity cost loss of not being eligible to go after some of those new contracts that have CMMC requirements.
Sure. And it's certainly not something where a year from now you want to wake up and see that in your solicitation and not have done any preparatory work at all. Yeah. Well, let's talk about what we've learned so far. We've learned so far about organizations who have gone through and gotten a CMMC Level 2 certification, or perhaps have failed that assessment for at least the time being. You said just under 500 so far have gotten that voluntary Level 2 certification. What have you learned about that process, both from the assessor side and from the organization seeking certification, in terms of just what's important to be taking into account?
I think early on, Justin, we saw, so really Level 2 certification assessments started being conducted February, March of this year. And early on, anecdotally, we certainly heard a number of false starts where you had companies who had been following CMMC, thought they understood kind of the level of effort required, and then when the C3POs conducted that phase 1, so the CMMC assessment process has 4 phases. That first phase is really to ascertain if the company is actually ready to be evaluated. And so the C3PO is looking at their system security plan, they're looking at their schematic diagrams of their network and their scoping of what's in scope for the assessment. Do they have evidence ready? And in a number of cases, I don't have any stats, but we heard frequently from the C3POs that they had to call it off. Mutually, once the OSC, the organization seeking certification, realized all the things that they hadn't fully done, and the C3PO said, we might want to pause here and go back to work and call us when you're ready. There were a number of those. I'm hearing less of that anecdotally. I think from and that was coming really from the C3POs. From some of the defense contractors that we've heard from at our conference and elsewhere, what we continue to hear is what I touched on earlier, that it does require an organizational commitment, and that they realize there are physical security requirements, there are training requirements that HR has to be involved in, there are leadership requirements in terms of resourcing to making sure you're conforming to the 110 requirements. And that was probably the biggest takeaway. And the second one, which is really important, that you really need to know your external service provider. In this day and age, in 2025, a lot, if not most, of the defense contractors are using either a managed service provider, a cloud service provider, a managed security service provider to help with the administration and operation of their IT environment. Well, when you're using what CMMC calls an ESP, an external service provider, you are now bringing, most likely, especially if they're storing, processing, or transmitting CUI, into your assessment scope. And so it's critical that defense firms understand not only what their external service provider is doing for them, how are they characterized? Are they actually a cloud service provider? Because there are different requirements if it is a cloud service provider than it is if it's a managed service provider or a managed security service provider. So that understanding of who's actually assisting you in meeting all those 110 requirements, you'll get stopped cold if it turns out you thought you were using an MSP, but actually you're using a cloud provider based on what they're doing for you, and now there's a FedRAMP requirement in the mix as opposed to just a CMMC Level 2. So knowing who's helping you and knowing your organization is fully committed are probably the 2 biggest takeaways that we're hearing from industry.
That's Matthew Travis, the CEO of the Cyber Accreditation Body. To watch his full conversation with Justin Doubleday, check out our Risk and Compliance Exchange at federalnewsnetwork.com.